We often come across the striking image of the masked king from Ridley Scott's 2004 film Kingdom of Heaven. He is frequently featured in poetic video montages where he symbolizes the profound composure and wisdom of a monarch who manages to control a complex political situation even while being gravely ill and physically weak.
When I was 16, I won a great victory. I felt in that moment I would live to be 100. Now I know I shall not see 30.
He conceals the symptoms of a severe illness beneath his clothing and a beautiful silver mask. In this video we will explore what exactly Baldwin IV was suffering from and how. What was his lifestyle and treatment like? Was he truly a brilliant military commander and wise king despite his health condition, and did he indeed hide the symptoms of his illness behind a silver mask? The Kingdom of Jerusalem was established by the Crusaders right after the First Crusade on the territory of modern-day Israel and Lebanon. Our story begins more than half a century after the founding of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. In 1161, Count Amalric, the brother of King Baldwin III, had a son. It seemed unlikely that the king's nephew would ever rule the state. But King Baldwin III suddenly died of dysentery. He was still young, had recently married, and had no heirs. The late king's brother Amalric took the throne. His son Baldwin became the next in line. Amalric made sure Baldwin received a proper education and at the age of 9 sent him to study under William of Tyre. William was a prelate, a high-ranking member of the clergy, a traveler and an intellectual known for his scholarship. Historians also know William as the author of the Chronicle of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. He taught the young prince the liberal arts and observed the development of his character. But even a royal child is still a child. The prince loved playing with other children. When the children would pinch each other's hands with their nails, William of Tyre noticed that while the others cried out in pain, young Prince Baldwin didn't react at all, even when he bled from the injuries. At first, everyone assumed the prince was just showing how tough he was. But after several such incidents, William called the prince to him and discovered that Baldwin's right hand and forearm were completely insensitive to pain. William of Tyre was familiar with the medical literature of his time, so the numbness in the limbs alarmed him. He hired Arab doctors to care for Baldwin. Leprosy was suspected by many, but no one rushed to a conclusion since there were no visible signs apart from the numbness. Eventually, the other hand and his legs began to go numb too, though still without visible symptoms. Today we know a lot about leprosy. It's an infection disease caused by Mycobacterium leprae. Leprosy affects the nerves by destroying the myelin sheath, which leads to numbness in the limbs and loss of skin sensitivity. Most symptoms are caused by the immune system's response to the infection: spots, plaques, granulomas and potentially paralysis, blindness, infertility, loss of fingers and facial disfigurement, the so-called lion face. Today, the disease is treatable with antibiotics and is classified as a neglected tropical disease due to its rarity. In the Middle Ages, leprosy was epidemic. The lack of effective treatments and undeveloped collective immunity made it one of the era's biggest medical challenges. Medical authorities at the time recognized leprosy as contagious. Fear of turning into a slowly rotting outcast led society to isolate lepers into special leper colonies under church care. The diagnosis of Baldwin was delayed out of compassion. He was a gifted boy, intelligent and hardworking. Even as he lost feeling in his hands and feet, he could still ride a horse and fence skillfully with a sword. At court, there were concerns about the stigma. Had his diagnosis been announced earlier, he likely would have been removed from court and joined the Order of St. Lazarus, a religious and military order for noble-born lepers, Templars and Hospitallers. The order protected leper hospitals and often participated in military campaigns. But Baldwin's father, King Amalric, suddenly died of dysentery. He knew about his son's illness but hadn't appointed a successor. A high court couldn't find a better candidate, so Baldwin was crowned in 1174 as Baldwin IV. At the age of 13, he became ruler of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, a state with a thriving economy and a strong defense system. Despite its small size, the kingdom's stable economy was supported by a chain of coastal cities that served as important trade hubs in the Mediterranean. The state guaranteed its citizens the protection of rights and freedom of religion, attracting more European, Muslim and Jewish merchants, scholars and mercenaries. For a few more years, a regent ruled in Baldwin's place until he came of age. During that time, his illness began to progress rapidly. The young king's body developed skin lesions, confirming that he had a more severe form of leprosy, lepromatous leprosy. Without a doubt, Baldwin was under the care of the best physicians in the kingdom throughout his life. If you lived in Baldwin IV's court, met a physician in the garden and asked, "What is leprosy?" he might answer something like this. Leprosy is a malignant disease caused by the spread of black bile throughout the body, which corrupts the nature of the organs, distorts their structure and shape. In the late stages, it damages the connection between organs, causing them to fall off due to ulcers. It is similar to cancer, spreading across the whole body. Sometimes it is accompanied by ulcers and sometimes not. In some cases, it lasts in a patient for a very long time. Even in its mild form, it is difficult to treat. And if it is severe, there is no hope of a cure. Leprosy in its early stages can be treated, but at old chronic case cannot be healed. If black bile is formed from yellow bile, the disease is more aggressive and painful, causes worse symptoms and more burning ulcers, but it is easier to treat. If the bile comes from the sediment of blood, the disease is calmer and safer and doesn't cause ulcers. Leprosy from scorched black bile resembles the first type, but is even harder to treat. These are quotes from the Canon of Medicine, written by the Persian physician Ibn Sina, or Avicenna in Latin. This book was the most popular medical guide in universities and private libraries from the 12th to 16th centuries. Did anyone recover from leprosy in the Middle Ages? There is incredibly little information. There are some legends about a medical school in Salerno that specialized in leprosy treatment. Nobles allegedly traveled there and recovered. Medical texts from that era don't call leprosy incurable but agree it's extremely difficult to treat. Some forms are incurable, but there was always a chance to relieve symptoms and delay complications. Based on Islamic medical sources, we can roughly reconstruct the lifestyle and treatment Baldwin IV followed from his coronation to his early death. He followed a strict diet, eating twice a day: stewed chicken or quail, barley bread and porridge, fresh vegetables, especially beets, leeks, cabbage and capers. He also ate bread with milk and honey, figs, almonds and raisins. He rarely drank wine. Every morning, he practiced physical exercise like fencing and horseback riding. Every evening, he bathed, followed by a rub-down with essential oils made from myrtle, grape flowers and broom. In the most difficult stages of the disease, after bathing, they would apply soda, sulfur, mustard, red pepper, camphor and mint. Bloodletting was likely rare or not performed at all. Avicenna recommended phlebotomy only in cases of breathing difficulty or possible suffocation from neck swelling. Yet once a month, the king may have taken laxatives or emetics. Baldwin regularly drank herbal decoctions containing anywhere from 5-6 to dozens of ingredients, mostly plants from South Asia. The effectiveness of these herbal remedies can't be conferred or denied without lab testing. But there is one treatment mentioned that, with high probability, may have helped in mild or early cases of leprosy. Viper brine, viper broth, ointments and oils infused with snake decoctions and snake wine. Avicenna and other authors name the viper a precious remedy for leprosy. He even wrote that lepers often recovered after failed assassination attempts involving snake bites. It has been proven that the component phospholipase A2, which is present in large quantities in snake venom, has bactericidal properties against gram-positive bacteria. Phospholipase has the ability to break down phospholipids, which are key components of cell membranes, leading to the death of gram-positive bacteria. Mycobacterium leprae, the bacterium that causes leprosy, is gram-positive. This effect still requires in vivo testing, but theoretically, at early stages or in milder cases, the use of snake-based treatments could indeed support full recovery from leprosy. In treatments using viper broth, benefits often did not appear immediately but became evident later. Sometimes recovery was preceded by a temporary loss of reason. One sign that the treatment was taking effect and that it was time to stop using it was when the leper's body swelled, their mouth became clouded, and then their skin peeled off, followed by recovery. If the patient did not experience confusion or swelling, the treatment needed to be repeated. In essence, the Islamic scholar was describing the effects of venom intoxication, which could occur after regularly consuming snake broth. Swelling, peeling skin, and mental confusion were likely side effects of high concentration of phospholipase A2 in the body, high enough to have a therapeutic effect against leprosy. We can conclude that recovery from leprosy was possible, but it depended on many factors: the form and severity of disease, the physician's experience and specialization, and of course one's financial resources. King Baldwin suffered from an aggressive form of disease, lepromatous leprosy. All the aforementioned treatments may have temporarily eased his symptoms, but they could not cure the disease, not at the early stage, not later. During the regency, while Baldwin was still a minor, the neighboring ruler Saladin was actively conquering Muslim principalities in Syria, rapidly expanding his empire, known as the Ayyubid Sultanate. Baldwin's regent, Raymond III, Count of Tripoli, was timid and unwilling to confront Saladin. He signed a truce with him, effectively allowing the Ayyubids to surround the Kingdom of Jerusalem on all sides. Baldwin IV did not support his regent's decision but could not act independently as he was not yet of age. He had no doubt that Saladin, empowered by the enormous resources of his newly conquered lands, would eventually invade the Kingdom of Jerusalem. In 1176, Baldwin came of age and assumed full royal authority. His first action was to break the truce with Saladin and begin preparing plans for a strike against the Ayyubid state. A year later, Saladin did invade the Kingdom of Jerusalem, bringing with him a massive army, 4 to 5 times larger than Baldwin's forces. The 16-year-old king acted decisively. Knowing that Saladin's strength lay in numbers, the leper king maneuvered, waiting for the right moment, then struck, ambushing Saladin's dispersed forces near the fortress of Montgisard. Saladin's army was utterly defeated, and the Muslim leader barely escaped the battlefield with his life. Baldwin IV personally led the attack. One of the most well-known depictions of the Battle of Montgisard is an 18th century painting by French artist Charles-Philippe Larivière. It shows Baldwin blind from leprosy without a mask and lying on a stretcher while giving orders to his army. But this scene is pure artistic fantasy. At the time, Baldwin was not yet blind and was still able to ride a horse. Several sources mention that he fought in the front lines of the battle, and more realistic are the medieval illustrations showing the young king charging at the enemy with a lance. His left hand was already paralyzed, but he skillfully wielded his weapon with his right. He needed help mounting and dismounting his horse. And by the way, during this very battle, he was also suffering from malaria, an incredibly strong figure. It would take Saladin a full 10 years after his crushing defeat at Montgisard to restore the military strength of the Ayyubid state. During that decade, the borders of the Kingdom of Jerusalem were fortified and the country flourished economically and spiritually. But Baldwin IV's health steadily deteriorated. He tried multiple times to abdicate the throne in favor of his cousins from France, but they refused. Because of his leprosy, Baldwin had no wife or children, which led to division among the lords who competed for influence and power. By 1183, the leper king could no longer move on his own and both his hands were paralyzed. He had lost the ability to blink, which caused his corneas to dry out, leaving him blind. Baldwin was forced to step down and appointed his rather dim brother-in-law, Guy of Lusignan, as regent. A man nobody liked, but there was no other choice. How realistic is that legendary scene from the movie, the meeting between Baldwin and Saladin? When Saladin laid siege to Kerak castle, Baldwin was blind and physically weak but mentally sharp. He couldn't trust such a critical military operation to his unreliable brother-in-law, so he revoked his abdication, dismissed Guy from the regency, and personally took command of the army. Riding between two horses while lying on a stretcher, Baldwin set out to leave the siege of Kerak. His presence temporarily united the feuding Christian lords. But the meeting between the two rulers never happened. Saladin feared Baldwin. As soon as he learned of Baldwin's approach, he lifted the siege and hastily retreated from the Kingdom of Jerusalem. 2 years later, King Baldwin IV died. He was only 24 years old. And, as always happens in these stories, after his death, fatal division broke out among the kingdom's lords. That same dim-witted brother-in-law, Guy of Lusignan, became king and promptly lost the entire army in the Battle of Hattin near an extinct volcano. Saladin crushed the Kingdom of Jerusalem and made it part of the Ayyubid Sultanate. In the Middle Ages, leprosy was feared. People avoided lepers, and rulers with the disease were often seen as unfit to govern. But Baldwin IV was the exception to every rule. The Muslim historian Imad ad-Din al-Isfahani wrote, "Despite his illness, his subjects were loyal to him. They encouraged him, they prized him, they wanted to keep him on the throne, and they paid no mind to his leprosy." After the failed Seventh Crusade, an old man in Damascus told a crusader, "I saw a time when Baldwin, king of Jerusalem, who was leper, defeated Saladin, even though he had only 300 armed men against 3,000 Muslims. But now your sins have reached such heights that you're driven like cattle across the field." And the final question, did he really wear the silver mask like in the movie? William of Tyre wrote that Baldwin was never isolated. Visitors to the court always saw his face, often with horror or pity. In every medieval illustration, the leper king is shown without a mask. We can assume that if he ever covered his face, it might have been with a cloth, but rarely, and it never became one of his defining features. The idea to put Baldwin in a silver mask came from screenwriter William Monahan for the film Kingdom of Heaven. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new, and if you did, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like.